Good afternoon, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Defining Virtuosity. I'm Odin Rathnam. The next Wohlfahrt study that we will work on is number 8, marked Largo. In my estimation, this is probably one of the hardest in the entire volume because it requires a tremendous control of the bow and vibrato patterns. You see, we have these long slurs with crescendi in them, and it's marked at an extremely slow tempo. That means that we have to find a way to be comfortable, relaxed, and still create enough concentration in the sound that we can develop it and grow it without getting tighter. One of the big principles that I try to share with all of my students, and I try to work on myself, is to not have a correlation between intention and tension. If I could coin a quote. That is to say that when we change notes, cross strings, accelerate, slow down, shift, any sort of change of that sort, particularly if we add intensity to the sound, there is a tendency, especially among talented kids, to tighten up because they can already feel the tension of the way they want to sing it, growing the line up, and they feel this intensity in the form of a physical reaction to their own musicality. There's this tension that we feel. And we have to find a way not to do that when we are in the business of musical and emotional manipulation, which is really our job. It's not necessarily my job to have the same experience creating a phrase as I would have receiving it if someone else were to play it for me. That's not to say that we're musically disengaged from what we're doing, but rather that we have to beware not to tighten for crescendi or diminuendos, accelerandos, ritardandos, shifts, changes of any sort. It's kind of like if I gave you the analogy of a tightrope walker that has finally found their balance on a rope and is holding one of those balancing poles and he's steady, and you say, now take a step, and he grabs the pole tighter and he tightens his ankles and he does everything that actually would precipitate falling because of this need for change, to put one foot in front of the other. I think we have to be conscious of that psychologically when we're playing, and be willing to fall off the horse, not tighten, not try too hard, but figure out what are the physical principles that we can take advantage of on the instrument to help us achieve our goal, which is a crescendo or a thickening of the sound or a thinning of the sound or whatever it is that we want. That said, it's easier said than done, and I've discovered that doing the reverse of what I do with fast pieces is very helpful in this particular one. And that means that in the beginning, I don't make my students play it as slowly as they do when their tonal control improves. So for the beginning student, I remark it allegretto or moderato, a little faster tempo. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And even there, they'll already start encountering some of the problems that exist with this. What I could suggest to you as a supplement is to go to Nate Cole's website and watch the tutorials on the sans filet, or the very long bow, the 1-minute bow, and practice that a little bit on open strings before doing this particular study. I think it might help you a little bit. So we have to create this separation between the hands, the ability to keep vibrato going and developing, and the bow to do its thing. And the result should be that we have crescendos where marked, subito pianos where marked, etc., etc. But again, much easier to play fast. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I wouldn't try to play it any slower than that in the beginning. But this is a study that can be practiced slower and slower as we develop our ability to control the sound. So we do the exact opposite of what we would do with a fast study, starting slow and then gradually going faster and faster. What you will discover is that the slower the bow is traveling, the more important it becomes for it not to slip over the fingerboard, to stay closer to the bridge. And when it's traveling faster, it can be a little further from the bridge. You'll also discover that when you want to develop the sound, it's easy to tighten up in the vibrato. All I can tell you is practice a lot of vibrato. If you go back to my video on conditions for developing a true impulse vibrato, it's also titled The Gypsy Next Door, and review that. And then if you do some of the vibrato exercises taught both on Nate Cole's site and on violinmasterclass.com, you can start to develop a wrist vibrato, which I think is very important for this kind of music. The arm will get very tired. I really try to focus on this kind of freedom in the wrists. That seems to stay a little bit more relaxed. You can also practice when you're vibrating, taking a single note and vibrating it freely with a relaxed arm, and then keeping the vibrato the same, change the bow sound. Come into the bridge more. Diminuendo. Crescendo. Diminuendo. Or on a down bow, crescendo, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, and do that with all 4 fingers. Just working on controlling that sound. I do use the arm vibrato for some of these as a slow pulse, but when I do that, it's very narrow, not wide, and I don't try to do it fast. Practice connecting. Three notes crescendo. Relax the left hand as you crescendo. Send the opposite message of what you're sending to the bow so that you don't fall into the trap of tightening as you develop the sound. And then gradually play it slower and slower. If you have a long slur, as we do on the second line, 5th and 6th measures, marked mezzo forte, Observe the principle of saving and traveling. That you save, that you're not out of bow for the four notes that fall there. In the subsequent slur, pay attention to your both shoulders' comfort, traveling from the B to the A natural after right here, or at that peak, that you don't find yourself squeezing more when you react, if you react emotionally to what you're doing. So really listening to your sound more than emotions. Yeah. So there you have it. This is, again, one of the hardest ones. I like to have a student come back to this as I'm working with them on vibrato and bow control many times, so that by the time they get to Kreutzer number 1, which is probably the hardest Kreutzer etude, they have some chance of playing it as marked with those incredibly long slurs and crescendos that require so much tonal control. But it's a great nerve tonic. Practicing this is very, very, very calming, because you really have to just focus and slow everything down. Long bows, sans filet, and all of that kind of stuff. Mr. Gingold used to tell me he liked it as a nerve tonic before walking out on a stage. It would just center him and get everything calmed down. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and share, and subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to add them, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching.